Hello everyone, welcome to the Soil Sisters channel. Today's topic, we're going to cover how to study for a PowerPoint based lecture course. The purpose of today's video is to go into some details about studying and committing things to memory for a PowerPoint-based lecture course. I've had many students in the past come into my office hours asking, how do I study for this class? For Intro Soils and many other robust courses, you may need to commit many things to memory. So the way I did well in the class, as well as many of my students that performed really well in the course, was by using flashcards. For those of you who aren't familiar with flashcards, this will hopefully ease you right into being a flashcard master. So the first thing that you'll need is flashcards. So generally I go for the generic type, the ones that have a ruled side and usually a blank side. Usually I go for these because they're easy for writing. Usually when you write out like a definition, you can write it easier when you have a ruled side, and on the other side you can put the term itself. And then if you want to get a little bit more creative, you can also go with color-coded flashcards. These are really great if you're doing things by sections, chapters, by week, things like that. You can also go with fun types of flashcards like these. You can get many different varieties. These are fun. Whatever is going to make you want to use your flashcards, go with that. You can also get, larger size flashcards. As you see, there's 4x6 and also 3x5 flashcards. Usually I go for the 3x5 because they're easier to hold just in your hand, but if you go for the 4x6, these are really helpful, especially if you're trying to write out a diagram. So like, say you're trying to memorize the nitrogen cycle, this is a great type of flashcard because then you can draw much larger, and unlike these smaller ones, or especially this size or this little doggy one, you can actually draw the whole thing out and then just keep them separate, so you have like your diagram flashcards versus your written word flashcards. My favorite types of flashcards are these types of flashcards where it comes with a binder clip and they already are perforated, so you can cut them in half, and then it doubles up pretty much your amount of flashcards. Alternatively, if you want to just go with these types of basic flashcards, you can just get a hole puncher and hole punch the corner and buy binder clips and then just add them, and then you have all of your flashcards together. This is really helpful because if you tend to walk with your flashcards, you won't lose them. Many times I was walking from my car to studying on my way to an exam, and my flashcards just fall and then they're out of order. So this is a really nice way of keeping it together. So the next thing you need, of course, is your pens. Pens or pencils or markers, whatever you like to go with. I typically go with a pen, a smooth writing utensil, just because if it's smoother writing, I'm more likely to use it, and it pops a little bit more. If you're into colorful things, you can have them like red for definitions or blue for your concepts, things like that. But I typically just go with a basic, nice, smooth writing pen. Next, you're gonna need your notes. I usually print out my lecture notes, so here I have it by week. A lot of people usually keep it in a digital format, but I like to have a physical copy with me as well in case I'm not able to get to my computer, or in this class electronics aren't allowed, so I usually take these with me and then take notes alongside my notes, and then whenever I'm making my flashcards, I can just make flashcards including those notes. Here I have just my PowerPoint lectures printed out, 6 on a page. You can go more than that. You can go 9 slides per page, but this is really nice because it's big enough where you can see all of the detail. The diagrams still come out pretty well. Unlike if you have 20 slides per page, it can get really awful. So you just want to have these when you're making your flashcards. Without your notes, you won't be able to make your flashcards as effectively, so make sure you have these available when you get started. So now that we have everything that we need, let's get into the actual flashcard making. So I always start at the beginning of my lecture notes and try to extract the critical information and try to get the meat of the slide. Something you can ask yourself when you're skimming through each lecture note is, what is the purpose of this slide? So once you locate the actual information from your slide, try to transfer that information into flashcard format, where the question is on one side, here on the blank side, and your answer is on the ruled side. So you're going to want to go through your notes and each slide and make sure that you can make a question out of your slide. So you have different types of questions that you can create, and most things can go onto flashcards even if you think that they're not that apparent. You have the answer on the ruled side because you write more on this side, but just try to make sure that you keep it as short and sweet as possible. Flashcards are not great for writing out essay format answers, so try to keep it as short as possible. Here are some tips on how to turn your slides into flashcard notes. So the easiest of flashcard questions is terms and their definition. So here on this slide you can see that the term itself is underlined, so that's an easy way to find it, and the definition is just there listed immediately below that. This is the easiest to find. You would just write the grade on the question side, and on the answer side you would have your definition. The next one is you might have things that are in list form. So you can pose a question. Here we see that the slide itself includes a list of things that you might want to know. So you can form a question in list format. So here I've just created my question, or what are the 4 visual structure grades, and on my answer side I have just included the 4 terms for that question. Later you can go on and individually make a flashcard for each of these. So here you can see that structure list has a definition alongside it, so I would go ahead and make another 4 flashcards for each of these to make sure that I know the term and the definition. So next you might have some more difficult concepts that aren't really easily transferable onto flashcard form. Create a question that makes you describe the concept and summarize it on the answer side. So as a general rule, I like to pretend that I'm the professor and how I'd form a question about the concept. For example, say there are 2 things that you've learned that are very similar but have one very important thing that make them distinct. I would pose the question as, how do so and so differ and why is that important? And I would summarize that in easy bullet points. That way I'm not writing too much on the answer side and you're still getting the conceptual points of your lecture slide and not just the terms and definitions, because you do want to dive into the information and not just skim over the surface. Some pro tips. So after you made all the flashcards that you can come up with for each individual slide, you're going to want to go ahead and check them each off and make sure that you can come back to it in case you don't get to make your flashcards in one sitting. This is really great because then you know you got all of the information you can get from each individual slide and you're not missing anything. And that way if you come back you can finish where you left off and you're not making duplicates of the same information. Be sure to look over the notes and try to find the overall picture. So you're going to want to skim through your notes and make sure, have I gotten the full picture of this? And this is really helpful so you don't get things confused. So say you were talking about 2 similar things but they're very different. So say you were covering soil moisture regime and also soil temperature regime in the same lecture, and just add in a couple more flashcards to the end and say what is the difference between soil moisture regime and soil temperature regime. That way you can keep things separate and also still get the full information from your lecture notes. So another pro tip is you want to make your flashcards on a daily basis. Flashcards will not be useful if you make them at the last minute. They take time and you get most out of them when you write them at a relaxed pace. Many times I've had students come in and say, well, I did flashcards, and I would ask them, when did you make them? And they'd say, oh, I made them the night before, and then it's not helpful because you don't have the time to actually physically write it out in a relaxed pace or the time to actually recite your flashcards and commit them to memory. Okay, so the next pro tip is keep your flashcards organized. So here you see that I have my flashcards in a little bin. If you have them in a spiral bound notebook, it's really helpful. You can just keep them organized by including the lecture note on them. That way you're just keeping them organized and you're not muddling up which week you did each flashcard. And this is really helpful. So say you're taking your first midterm and you're covering lectures 1 through 8, you can keep those all together and then not add in more flashcards that you made for other lectures, and you're only studying the stuff you actually are going to be tested on. So the next thing is always keep your flashcards. So even after the midterm, you're going to want to keep them all together because eventually you're going to end up with a large stack of flashcards. And come finals time, you're going to already have most of your lecture notes in flashcard format. Do not throw away your flashcards after the exam. And even now, I still go to my flashcards from previous classes if for future courses you might want to keep it because it's pretty much all this work. You don't want to throw it away, and it's really helpful when finals come around. And then say you didn't finish all your flashcards for the second midterm, you can just keep adding to it rather than starting all over. So always keep your flashcards. So making your flashcards is the most labor-intensive part. So finally, let's get to studying. Flashcards are really great for recalling things on a moment's notice. You need to be honest with yourself on how quickly you can recall each of your flashcards. Generally, how I start is you read your question on the question side of your flashcard and then try to recall what's on the other side. So when you're going over it the first few times, you're going through your stack, you might not recall things right away, and this is okay. This is the part where you're just trying to commit things to memory. So read over the question and then try to remember the answer, and then also try to memorize it in the opposite direction as well. Just make sure you're retaining the information when you go over it the first few times. Once you think you know your stack pretty well, start testing your recall time. If you take more than 5 seconds to think up the answer, put the flashcard to the back of your stack. If you can recall within less than 5 seconds, you're going to move it to the I know this stack. Go through the stack a few more times until you get more and more things in your I know this stack. Once you can recall all your cards in less than 5 seconds, put the whole stack back together and try to go through them once more. Once you have all of these committed to memory within less than 5 seconds, start challenging yourself by turning the cards over and going the opposite direction. So reading the answer back and then trying to recall what the other side said. So this is really helpful if you repeat the I know this stack procedure and just keep going through your flashcards. And once you get more and more things on your I know this stack, then you have mastered your flashcards. Okay, so now that we have mastered our flashcards, our stack of flashcards, now let's try to step it up and practice your flashcards with a friend. And here's Amy, and she's going to help me learn my flashcards. All of these things, you will definitely feel like you've mastered your subject. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel. If you're a student of ours, check back each week for a weekly overview of lecture. Have fun and study hard!